Welcome to the Purpose Podcast. My name is Rachel. I'm here with my husband, Zach, our amazing friends, and we really do believe that you have been given a purpose, and that is our passion to help you walk in it. And today, we are going to get into some fun stuff.
Do you notice how it's always, I'm here with my husband and these amazing friends?
Let me try
These
again.
incredible
I'm here
friends.
with my amazing
No, it's too late now.
husband and our awesome
We're not
friends.
going to redo it. I'm be honest. I mean, Jennifer, yeah, but sure, you're gonna normal me and amazing Andy.
Listen.
I think it's ridiculous. We'll talk about it at home later, but I just wanted you to know, not starting off great from my
Well, I
perspective.
feel like we're starting off great. And everybody in the comments has already said it's awesome. They like when Rachel does
Yes.
the
I
intro.
was going to say, isn't that the after podcast poll?
It
that
is.
comes out?
It is.
Excellent.
It is. And I'll be honest, Rachel has been seeding it with her friends, and then she'll be up
You gotta do
late.
what you gotta do. Guerrilla warfare, y'all.
At night, she'll be up late, and she just making like burner accounts and like,
It's not
and like, yeah. I was like, oh, babe, it's real good. Padding the stats.
That's not true. So, hey, we're here with Andy and Jennifer as we're going to talk a little bit about money today. And we brought some people who actually have professional experience, but also some stories in their own life, in their faith about money. And so we wanted to bring some people we know and share them with you to hear how God has moved and is moving.
Yeah, I love what one of our friends says. She says we like to introduce our favorite people to our favorite people.
Yeah.
And so if we were going to talk to somebody about our personal finances, or even like they'll talk about here in a second, the church finances, this is a family that we go to, that we would go to with, or that we do with the church finances, that we trust with our personal finances. And so this isn't just like a people who do it professionally. These are people that we trust with the things that are, when it comes to money, which is not the most important thing, but the most important things that money do pertain to, they're a part
Absolutely.
of it for our life. So
Yeah.
that means a lot to us. But
We trust Andy and Jennifer. So why don't we'll start out just helping our friends get to know our friends. So Andy, Jennifer, why don't you introduce yourselves? Just tell us a little bit about your life and what you do.
I'm Jennifer. I do taxes for small businesses and individuals.
that sounds fun.
It is super fun.
You're ramping up into a good season for you, right?
It's very busy, and it's a great time of year because I get to see all my clients who are my friends. So it's nice. Because of that, though, I'm knee deep in people's stuff. It's very personal. So I see a lot of stuff because it is very personal.
Right.
I'm a CPA, have 2 kids. They're fantastic. A fantastic husband.
Oh, he got
I was
fantastic.
wondering when you were going to work that in.
Yeah.
That's it. That's me. And I'm in my 27th tax season, so
27th tax season.
27th tax season. Yes, I started on pencil and paper, no more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pencil, paper, no more.
Like pencil and paper, writing the numbers
Oh
out.
my
Not anymore.
gosh.
Now we have computers, but
Oh, my goodness.
Back in the day.
Wow.
back in the day, I know. That
About
makes
you,
me
Andy?
really old.
So I'm Andy Broyles. We've been married for 24 years. I'm also a CPA. However, I don't do tax work. Actually, she forbids me from giving tax advice. So,
Yes.
we kind of know our roles after 24 years. I'm more on the corporate side of the house. So I've spent my career working for almost 30 years, and I think I'm on my 8th different industry. Pretty much everything except for tax that you can do in corporate America on the finance side I've done. Banking, work for a medical device company now, which is really fulfilling, just seeing the end result of what we do. So it's a great thing. But then I also serve on the leadership team here at Faith Promise. Fairly long tenured leadership team member. But it's great, and it's a great opportunity to be able to give back and use just experience that we've learned and try to help out as much as we can with the staff.
Yeah. How long have you guys been at Faith Promise?
12 years.
Yeah, that'd be about right. 12
Yeah,
years.
we came in 2012.
Yeah.
So we're in our 13th year.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We like it here.
We like you guys here.
We're glad you're here. That's good. We're glad you like it.
Yeah. If you're godly enough to hear the 8 o'clock service or 8:30 service, if I call out a young man, Cooper, it was their son,
Yes.
who may have dozed off once or twice,
A time or two.
but
It's early morning.
Yeah, let's pull the curtain back a little bit on this, because I would get texts from Zach before he would take the stage. And I'm like, how does he know? Little did I know, in the green room at Pell, there are cameras with screens that you can see. And so he would send me a screenshot of the back of my bald head at the 8:30 service. And so I finally was able to figure that out.
That's right. I was trying to see if Cooper's head was nodding before I called him out.
It was.
I love it. So listen, the conversation we're going to have today makes people a little uncomfortable. People don't really like to talk about money, whether they feel, okay, you're going to try and take something from me, or I feel like a failure and now you're just going to shine this big light on a place where I feel unsuccessful, or it's a place that honestly, like right now in our economy, people are very scared when it comes to finances, especially young families. It's a really hard season. Hey, I'm afraid like we're going to be in a position that I would never have dreamed. Maybe you do find yourself in a position you never dreamed. So before we even get started, we just want to take a second to connect with people who aren't really comfortable having this kind of conversation. What are some things that make this conversation hard? When you sit down to talk to someone about their finances, hey, what is it that you see? Hey, because you're a prayer warrior, you have a spirit of discernment. God gives you words of knowledge. So when you sit down to have these conversations, what are some of like 2 or 3 of the things, hey, this makes talking about money difficult?
I think shame is a big one, because people do feel like failures, and people do feel like, you talk about the current time, these young kids feel like failures because they're not able to do what we or our parents did. And that's not right or good or fair. Plus, shame is a tool of the devil. That is not of Jesus.
Yeah.
So shame. And I think fear too, because, not knowing if you're going to be able to pay your bills or feed your kids, that's a real, of course you're fearful. That makes sense. Yeah. So if you're relying on you, you're going to be fearful. So plus, we were raised not to talk about money or religion. I mean, these are things you're not supposed to talk about in polite company. It's utter nonsense. It's not, you can't bring it out into the light.
Sure.
It's got to be brought to the light. You can't fix it if it's not in the light. So that's why I don't hesitate to talk about any of it, because it's got to be in the light. You can't deal with it if it's not. So.
Yeah, I think there's a couple other items as well on top of that. Those are all great. When you look at social media, for example, you kind of craft how you want people to view you, right? Yeah. It's very easy out of a 24-hour period for me to find that 10 seconds to take this photo that I want to be my persona, the world's view of me in that moment, right? Money's not that way. It's very objective. A bank statement, the number is what it is. Right. A credit card statement, the number is what it is. You can't hide it. You can't change it. And so I do think that's a part of it too. You can't craft your own message. The number is what it is.
Gosh, that's good. It's exposing.
I think the other part of it as well is it's obviously it's just very personal. We've talked in the past about there's a poverty mindset and a prosperity mindset, and so you're judged either way. Right. If you make too much money, you're judged. If you don't make enough money, you're judged. And so you're going to get, when money comes up, you're going to be judged in one form or fashion, and no one wants that. Yeah. So I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah. Gosh, that's super good. So something we can know and be aware of is when we walk into this conversation, particularly as in the family of God, the people of God, we can't let this stuff get in the way. Nope. We don't serve money. Money serves us as we serve God. So we have to be able to talk about it just like we talk about anything hard, whether that's, sex or relationships and, reading your Bible. Some of these things are hard conversations to have, but we still need to have them so that we're honoring the Lord in everything that we do. Because remember, if we want to win our world, we have to be living in such a way where the world can be won. And if we are not seeing God in our finances, then it's really difficult for us to say, hey, my whole life is surrendered. I love God. I love people. I'm walking in my purpose, when we're only doing it in some places.
Exactly.
So,
and most of us aren't called to be like John the Baptist or like monks where we don't interact with money. So it's not unspiritual, or you can't over spiritualize it and be like, hey, I don't have anything to do with it, but there is a very spiritual nature to money. There's about 500 or so verses that talk about prayer, 600 or so verses that talk about faith, and then 2,350 that talk about money or possessions. Wow. And that disparity is because we're all pretty readily available to say, I should pray more. We're all pretty readily available to say I should have more faith. But again, you go to the objectivity and some of that about money. I believe that Jesus knew it would be a real challenge for us. So God's word is very clear. It's very consistent. But just to add this in, and we'll probably get to it a little later, one of the reasons money is so challenging to talk about is because there is a spiritual attack. There's a spiritual nature about finances. Yeah. And then the love of money makes people take a form of godliness but deny its power. Talks about that in 2 Timothy 3. So we may get into that, but that's just so everybody can feel it. Part of the challenge with talking about it is there's a spiritual nature and wrestle that goes on with this.
Yeah, that's good. So if we find ourselves, wrestling, I think one of the things that helps break that yoke of bondage is a lot of times when we come to a place of desperate need. Anytime you're reading in Scripture and you see people come to desperate need is when they find themselves experiencing the presence of the Lord. And maybe not even in the way they would have said, I want this answered. I think about Hannah in the Old Testament where she was desperate for a child and it drove her to the temple on her knees begging God to give her a child and then surrendering that child back to, the service of the Lord. That was not what she would probably have originally planned, but her desperation drove her to a place to experience God differently. So let's just think about for a second, if we're in a place of desperation when it comes to money, we feel like I'm running out of money before I'm running out of month. Would you guys just share a moment where you saw God in your own life? This is not your professional opinion. This is, we've had moments, Zach and I've had moments where God literally showed up and did things. I can't tell you how there was money there, but I'd love for people to hear your story. Where have you seen God bring provision where there literally should not have been?
Over and over, over and over. I think we'll probably talk about this later, but tithing, our life changed when we started actually tithing, our financial life.
When was that?
10 years ago-ish, maybe? 8 years ago?
No, it was longer than that, yeah.
Time flies. I don't know.
Yeah, 10 to 15.
10 to 15, say.
Why was that?
Why was that? Well, I guess, one of the things I do love about our church is this is a hard conversation and it's awkward. But that doesn't really stop anybody. We still talk about it, which is a good thing. So if you sit through enough sermons where the pastor is saying, are you tithing? We want this for you. Eventually, you're like, wait a minute. I need to think about that, right? So we thought about it. And we were like, we're going to start doing this. So we'd start with 1%, and then we'd bump it up and bump it up and bump it up. Until, I don't know, we were at probably 4 or 5% maybe. And I don't know what happened that Sunday, but it was time. So we just went right on up, right? So we're at 10%. And since that's when the floodgates opened. Wow. That's when God was like, oh, welcome. You're going to trust me now. And that's literally when the floodgates opened. So as far as providing, that's the original question.
Yeah.
We used to be in a small group. This is one of my favorite small groups where we're in. And whenever anybody would have some kind of random thing that came up, like a doctor's bill or an attorney bill or a whatever bill, we're like, well, I guess we'll pray on it because we don't, nobody here has any money. So we pray about it. And, checks would just show up in the mailbox. And then the next week, some of that check would just show up in the mail. We started mailbox money is the term we coined.
Yeah.
And we also declared ourselves God's favorite small group because money would just show up. It just consistently happened because we always went to Jesus and said, we can't fix this. We need you to fix it. So, and he did. Because if you ask him, he wants to help you.
Yeah.
If you're honoring him, he will honor you.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
And then you have
I think from my end on kind of a different take of it, talking about our professional past, mine's been more on the CFO side and president of company side. And so going through COVID and really not knowing what's going to happen day to day, if we can all kind of take our minds back to that. Yeah. You heard everything you heard on the news changed within 30 minutes and the guidance we were given was changing. And we had decided we had such a great team that we were going to do everything we could to keep our team together. And so you were watching your business go down just in volume, but wanting to make sure that if somebody wanted a job, they had a job. And we didn't furlough anyone. But there were days it was like, okay, we have to make this payment, and we're going to need between the next 48 hours. I'm going to somehow need $200,000 to come into the bank account. And, God says, if you bring it to me and lay it before me, he'll intercede on your behalf. And we never furloughed anyone. We never laid anyone off.
And the money always came in.
And that wasn't by some great financial plan. It was just faithfulness of God that saw us through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just something to point out there, between the things you shared, your personal family, but then also, as you guys have shown, it throughout the Bible, trust with little, give you charge over much. Also, Andy, you bringing that into a CFO position, you weren't the CFO of a church or a Christian company either, but you were bringing that in, that faith and that desire and that hope. And so we talk about winning our world. And again, we talk about money, something as sensitive as money, whenever somebody has faith, hope, light, joy about it, gosh, I mean, you talk about there's something real different about a guy that says, I'm really going to pray about that 200,000 so these people can keep their jobs. I think that's a significant gospel representation.
Yes,
so it's pretty cool.
Well, and it turns into, you and I have talked about this. I'm not a naturally evangelical person in the sense that I readily run out and just share my testimony with strangers. Grew up Baptist, so we would do the Tuesday night door track kind of thing through youth, but that's still not my nature. And what I found over 30 years of doing this, God has used my faith in Him to then be able to turn that into evangelism opportunities.
That's right.
When you have those moments, and everyone's aware that, hey, we need something to happen here, and when it happens, to be able to say why that happened. Yeah. And I firmly believe, it was a faith, not only by myself but others, that God would provide. Yeah. And so, you don't have to be someone that's willing to go out and just stop people on the street and say, hey, can I tell you my testimony? Right. If you're willing and open, God will give you those opportunities by the natural things that happen in your life. Just say, well, yeah, this happened and here's why. And, and it's the only time this has happened in my life.
And money's a great opportunity to do that.
Yes.
Yes, that's good.
I think one of my favorite things is when we actually pray and ask the Lord to provide things for people around us, and we get to be a part of being generous in that. So we'll be praying for somebody else to get something, whether it's a car or, hey, they need a bill paid, and what needs to be provided comes into our hands. Yeah. And we're charged as being the steward of what God's given us. So we get to go and be a part of meeting the need.
And it's hard for your fingers not to curl around what the Lord has given you. It's just, Rachel's better at it than me. Mine just seemed to close right away. That's why I don't know what we have. It's just right here. It's just Rachel's giving it away.
I love to give some away too.
Rachel and Jennifer just giving it away.
The Lord will pay my bills. He's always paid my bills.
Oh my God.
It stresses Zach out.
It does.
It's okay. So really, one of the things I think that's it's so good just to make sure, one of the things you can win your world is actually by asking the Lord to provide things for people around you. And then watching God give you what they need so that when they receive it, they're sure of where it came from. Because, recently we had something like that, and there wasn't this big, oh my gosh, I'm going to serve the Lord now. And they didn't start going to church every single Sunday or anything like that, but they were sure the Lord saw them. And they were sure, and it opened up this opportunity for us to continue to have conversations and meet, over dinner, and have these conversations that were hard before, but now, hey, my heart is softened because I know God sees me and He loves me. So help me learn more about who this kind of God is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So and everybody listening is a bunch of different places. There's people who are financially secure. There's people who are, they don't, just all kinds of different places. And you guys talked about where the Lord provided, mailbox, all kinds of different things. You got but you also said 10, 15 years ago when you started tithing, Malachi 3:10, the Lord said, test me in this and see if I won't. And you referenced that earlier when you said the floodgates were open. Yeah. And so God's blessed, and you guys have worked hard, all that kind of stuff, but God's blessed. But it seems like that you guys are still very dependent on the Lord, very generous. Like none of that stuff slowed down, because it does seem, people think I'll be generous when I have more, which we know is you never really have more. You only have what you have. It never feels like more, right?
If you wait to get married or have kids when you have enough money, you'll never be married and you'll never have
Right,
kids.
exactly right. And so how have you guys continued to stay like leaning and dependent on the Lord when by worldly standards you would have, you know, financial security or whatever the word you might put with it, but you guys have stayed at an attempt to stay out kind of over your skis a little bit, financially faithful and overly generous. I mean, why do you still do that?
I'll take the Jesus route. You take the money route. Okay. All of our money it came from the Lord, so it doesn't belong to me anyway. So I can be stingy with it, but it isn't mine. So what's the point? That, you know, it doesn't make any sense. So we both get great joy in giving away money and things. It brings, like, it's good. It's really, really good. You can't beat that. It's just that good. Yeah. So that brings us great joy. But too, knowing I think it's a mindset thing. If you ask God, I'm a huge believer. He loves the purification of silver in James when he talks about that. It's his favorite. What I love about it is it's the process of sanctification. So if you ask Jesus to fix this thing about you, whatever it is, greed, attachment to money, all the stuff, he will fix it, but you have to ask him and let him. So Jesus has fixed that in us. He has taken the part out of us that honors and serves money and honors and serves stuff. We don't have that anymore because he took it away. Yeah. That's a gift. I mean, that's just a gift. So for me, it's that piece of it's just gone now. I don't answer to money at all. It answers to me and Jesus because it belongs to him. So, and
part of what you said is a mindset where you said none of it's mine anyway.
Yes.
You know, and so you'll hear some people, we take it for granted because we've been really blessed to be in, at least for the last decade, and where we are. But we say we give the tithe, we give back to God. Which that's inferring the fact that he gave it all to us. That's what you referenced. Is we're not giving him something that's ours. We're giving him back something that's his, and he let us keep 90, which is pretty good deal.
Pretty darn good,
You know, and there's not many that give. Yeah, so so I was just clarifying that. But what would you say, Andy?
Yeah, no, I think, and I know Rachel and I have talked about this in the past. One of my favorite words is the word stewardship, and I know you used it just a few moments ago. And that we're really just caretakers, right? Of what God's given us. And so, we talk about, it's the Purpose podcast. So, we talk about purpose a lot at Faith Promise, and taking your gift quiz and find out what your spiritual gifts are. And part of stewardship, we're talking about finance today, but there's also your time and your resources and your talents that God's given you as well. And I'm sure you guys, cover those in other podcasts, but, God, my purpose was not to serve in FB Kids, and that would not work out well. I'm not to change diapers and those kind of things. But when I went through and took my spiritual gifts quiz and test, God's given me experience, a skill set, and certain talents that revolve in the financial area. And so for me not to use those both in our personal life of he's poured favor on us, and so for me not to combine his favor with his talents he's given me to then allow us to give and then to be able to give back here in time and talent on the leadership team and help the church steward as well, then I wouldn't be using what he's given me across the spectrum. And so I had a really good friend that was going to leave the corporate world and go to not-for-profit, and he was asking my opinion. I said, well, it's good. And he said, well, I just always feel like I'm trying to hit these corporate metrics, and they don't really mean anything, and I want to go somewhere where I feel like I'm giving back. I said, absolutely, that's your purpose. I said, but I think what you'll realize when you go to that space, everything happens with funding as well. And so those that do steward their money that are then able to turn around and give are what's going to allow you to fulfill. Right. We talk about the speed of the vision. Yeah. And so while we're not given the vision, that comes to you and the leadership team here. By being stewards and taking care of what God gives us allows us to play a part in the speed of the vision.
That's right. Yeah. And if you don't remember that phrase, whenever we talk about generosity, we say that we get to set the speed of the vision. By God has set the vision, and that's one of my primary job is to pursue the Lord for clarity around that vision. But we in our generosity set the speed because things do cost money. Buildings cost money. They do all that stuff, and I love whenever they're trying to catch Jesus about money, because even in the Bible they were all obsessed with taxes, which you guys experienced, I'm sure, when y'all read the Bible, and they're freak out about taxes is probably means even more to you guys. But Jesus' response, whose picture's on that? Well, Caesar's picture's on. Well, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. And for our currency, a president or something like that's on there. Give that to the government, but give to God what is God's. His image is in us, so we give us to Him, and so it's just again, there's so much spirituality around finances, and I think it just has so many people in bondage. But yeah,
I wonder. So, what are some of the things you talk about stewarding really well? What role does contentment play in that for you guys?
Okay, well, I'll fess up on this one. So I have a long history of not being content. That's coupled with my deeply entrenched sin of pride and ego. And so I've always described myself as a 2x4 guy. For God to teach me something, He has to hit me. We used to have bulls and cattle and stuff, and you just had an ornery one that you had to hit by a 2x4 right here before they had to pay attention to you. So I'm kind of that way. It has to get really bad for me to start paying attention.
Sure.
Otherwise, I feel like I can work myself out of it.
Right.
So I think, and what was the original question?
Contentment.
Yeah, so
you started so many hits with a 2x4.
I think one of the things about money as well is, kind of touched on a little earlier, but it's the universal scoreboard. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, wherever you're from. Money's a unit of measure, and it's how people are scored, right or wrongly. And so for me to be contentment, I was always a achievement-oriented person, still am. And so, if I got a promotion, it was like, okay, that's great. I appreciate that. Now, what do I need to do to get here?
Sure.
Nothing was ever enough. And so I like to tell folks, 50-year-old Andy makes decisions that would make 30-year-old Andy cringe because we're just at a different place in life.
Yeah.
And,
you know what's important.
Right. And priorities are different.
Yeah.
And, when I was younger, there weren't enough hours that I could work. It was just whatever it took. And so I do think a lot of it does come with life experience. We talked a little earlier about the younger generations and kind of where they're at right now. We have a 17-year-old. I'm now feeling what I'm sure my parents felt when I was 17, but it took me having that to know. So, I think it does take going through those rough spots to reach a point where you do see God move, because that's when you realize, okay, it's really not me, it's God, and I have a role to play in that, but He's going to take care of me. And so therefore, I am content in what I have. And you start to change your perspective. I know I'm rambling a lot here, but it's, for me, I just had to learn it. I think just knowing that, that it was in His hands, one, that takes a load off. You're not putting yourself through the washer cycle of trying to, hey, it's just me trying to figure this out. And so I think the contentment for me was knowing I didn't have to do it by myself.
Yeah.
That I had someone else there that was going to pick me up when I just fell.
Yeah.
And on the financial side. So.
Well, and I can tell you, we've had a lot and we've had a little. And we've had none. But the Lord took care of us all the way through all that. I mean, the bills were always paid. Nobody ever starved to death. I mean, and for most people, that's kind of it. I mean, you may not be living the high life and going on lots of fancy vacations and doing all the great things, but you're fine. The Lord is taking care of your needs because that's what He tells us He'll do. So contentment, in my mind, is knowing He'll take care of the things. And I know this is a broken record, but ask Him to take away all this stuff, this drive for perfection, this drive for more, this drive for more stuff and more things and more people and comparison. All of it. Just ask the Lord to take it away. Yeah. He will take it away if you let Him. He will take it away.
Because I was going to ask just about contentment, because it is. Contentment is
it's huge.
The freedom that comes with contentment.
Yes.
And again, it doesn't matter what socioeconomic level you find yourself on. If you're a college student on ramen, or
Exactly.
if you have multiple homes, whatever it might be, there's comparison everywhere. And there's always another level to get to. And so there's a couple questions I had around contentment, but I guess the main one is, what is a way that, like, on a daily or like on a consistent basis, what's a habit that you're doing that, like, continues contentment? Because there's a moment right now where it's like, well, we're talking about contentment. Be content. I give it to the Lord. But what are the habits that we're living? That you guys are living? Because I mean, we pastor, like, and I almost guarantee you, if we wrote down separately, they're going to be very similar. But from two CPAs, from a CFO, and then a traditional CPA. I mean, what do you guys feel like you do? And you hope that your kids do, that build continued contentment on a more of a daily basis than just like whenever the Lord has to hit you in the head with a 2x4.
I think gratitude's the easiest thing,
That's great.
Focusing on what you actually have. I have 2 healthy children. I have a great husband. We have a home with a heater in it. It's warm. It's not anything huge. It's just focusing on what you do have. And I don't compare myself to other people and their lives, because if I've learned anything, people are a mess, all of them. I mean, there is chaos.
Yeah.
The people that look perfect, they're not. Their marriage isn't perfect. Their life isn't perfect. Their kids are a mess too. Everybody's a mess.
Right.
So there's really no reason for me to compare my life to other people's when they're a mess too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it is, you talk about taking it before God too. Contentment, victory, joy, those are daily walks. And all it takes is one bad thing to get you out of that.
Right.
Or me, I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
And so I do think it starts with every morning. One of the things I pray for is, God, let me walk today in contentment, in joy, and in peace.
Yeah.
And I have to say that every day, or I'll get off track before I even get anywhere. Gratitude obviously is just a huge piece of that.
That's huge.
And just consistently being thankful for what you have, and documenting and writing that down. We've talked about the Tyler and Hilton Hill or other messages that we've heard. It's doing a gratitude journal. Even not a gratitude journal, just when you sit down at your desk, take a Post-it note, write 3 things down, and put it on your monitor for that day, and then the next day do it again.
Yeah.
We need that reminder, because we get so distracted during the day that we start to feel, woe is me. And it's live in the moment, which was what I was awful about. I was always looking ahead. Yeah. And, we've had conversations around, things we're at, and I just mentally wasn't there. Yeah. And so living in the moment, enjoying the moment, reminding ourselves we're not guaranteed tomorrow, so deal with that when it gets here. Yeah. But I think you have more gratitude, and you appreciate what you have when you're living, in the 5 minutes we're in right now, than trying to think of, all right, well, where do I need to be in 3 years? Yeah. So not that you don't need to plan, but live in the moment.
Babe, if you were going to write down what you were grateful for every day.
There's a right answer to this, I think.
There's a right answer, not just
where
one.
Would you write it down at?
Now. This is normally.
No, where would you write it down at?
Where would I write it down? You mean you want me to put it in a public place so that you want me to get a sticky note?
I'm talking about the Faith Promise app, babe. Not everything.
I thought you were talking about you.
Not everything's about me. Should it be?
You wanted me to tell everybody I'm really grateful for my husband, which I am. The whole time they were talking, I was like, hey, all of those things you can actually find in the Faith Promise app. So every day, your daily habits, there's a spot to put.
That's what I was trying to do. If you go look at Rachel's, my feeling, that's 2. Strike 2. Just so we know, strike 2. That's where we're at.
This is going great. Super good podcast.
Well, he is also aware that there's a share button on there that
there
goes
is
out
a share.
to
That's
everyone.
right. He wants everyone to see on your share. You can share those things publicly or not. Yeah. But hey, there is a place where you can actually put down what you're grateful for every day and pray every day and have people pray for you. So if it's something, you're in a situation like Andy, you're saying, hey, I really wrestled with that. You can actually say, put that out there and ask people to partner with you and intercede on your behalf. Yes. Jesus is interceding for us, but also we have brothers and sisters in Christ who can do that with us as well.
And it's not in the notes or anything to talk about the app, but the reason that those are the habits that we have, gratitude, prayer, and Bible is because those habits statistically, from an anecdote perspective, also spiritually, change contentment in your life, spiritually, financially, relationally. And so I love gratitude and prayer. Prayer is where I was going to go. I figured we'd be in the same ballpark, so that's perfect.
So if I'm looking to see a change in my finances, what would you say are, just really quick, a couple of bullet things? Hey, here's some things you've got to be doing if you want, like, there is a supernatural piece. We know there is a spirit of mammon. There is like a spirit behind the desire to serve money. It is not of God. Remember, there's two powers at work in your life, and you can choose which one we bow to. So we serve God, not money. But let's say, hey, I'm looking to break the bondage to money. I've asked the Holy Spirit to come and deliver me from it, just like you were talking about. Hey, I'm making a spiritual decision first, that I will serve the Lord only. There will be no other gods before him. So let's say I've dealt with this spiritually. I've gone to the Lord. Maybe I have some people in my small group pray with me, for me, but I'm experiencing spiritual freedom. Now I'm looking to walk in some financial freedom. What are a couple of things, like, hey, if you're not doing these 3 or 4 things, then you're missing it?
Well, I assume you're going to say budgeting.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's so different. So, I mean, today's February the 20th. So, we're right after the new year. I think probably the most popular resolution for people that do resolutions is around their health, right? And there's not anyone, a nutritionist or anyone, that wouldn't tell you, well, you know how many calories you're taking in, and then how many you're
the ins and the outs.
And your financial situation is no different.
Same.
Now, you ask a lot of people, they don't know how much money they make.
Or how much they spend.
They definitely don't know how much they spend.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about budgeting, everyone wants to make this very complex, and the more complex you make something, the more likely you're to give it up after a couple of tries. And so just very quickly understanding, hey, how much money do I make? Take your last paycheck stub, and when it says how much you paid, use that as an example. And if you get paid every week, just say, all right, times 4. That's how much money I'll make this month, roughly. Look at your credit card statement, look at your bank statement, and it'll tell you pretty much how much is going out each time. So that way right? You can't make decisions without knowing the information.
And I would argue a very harsh and realistic look at what is a want versus what is a need. We're working on that with our children.
Yeah.
Because they don't always get that. Because I don't need to stop at Starbucks 3 times a month. It's nice, but I don't need it. I don't need 5 different subscriptions to TV things.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't even need one. Depends on how much money there is, I mean, the things that used to be considered excesses and frivolities now seem kind of like, well, that's a must. Obviously I need that. Well, you really don't.
What was that word you used? Excesses and
frivolities.
I know, obviously now I know what that means, but for Andy, what does that mean?
That means the extra stuff. You don't really need it. It's fluff.
Fancy things.
Have you ever heard that word?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Cool.
That's all that book reading does.
My degree is in English literature. I've heard a lot of words.
If they said I skipped that word. I was like, that's not a word. That was a typo.
Tell me that's not
exactly. One time at dinner every night, Jennifer will say something. He'll look at her and like, that's not a word.
He'll say that's not a word. But just because you don't know what it means doesn't mean it's not a word.
I love it. So
can I ask you a question? Faith Promise every year buys the Every Dollar app. For
the Dave
Ramsey Every Dollar app. So you talk about budgeting. Again, you guys budget professionally. Would that be a good resource for people? I mean, would you recommend that for households?
I got the notification earlier this week that the Ramsey Plus free membership was out there, and you can go to the Faith Promise app if you'd like to take advantage of that.
Well done, Andrew.
But no, it certainly is, and Dave Ramsey's a great model to work with. It's a very cash in, cash out.
We did that when we were first married, and it worked because we didn't have any money, but we had envelopes with our little bit of money.
Yeah, no,
and it worked.
And you're when you have to dig into an envelope to pull out cash, that's a lot easier than swiping a credit card and hoping you kept the receipt and typing that in somewhere, etc. So Ramsey's great. There are a number of free ones out there that if you don't want, for whatever reason, you don't want to use Dave Ramsey, there's multi-platform, whether it's on Apple or Google, that are free. They have premium things, but you don't have to pay for it. You can, going back to Jennifer, if you want to go back to we won't say a date, and do it paper and pencil, then you can do that too.
Won't say a date.
It's really easy to do, but they make it so easy now where you can link your bank, your credit card, and it'll do the work for you.
Right.
You just have to have an understanding and the commitment to do it.
That's good.
Yeah, that's super good. I think one of the things that it's important to like note is that things feel different now than they have felt 20 years ago. If you listen, you have a lot of young families that are like, okay, my parents at 35 were doing some things 30 that I can't do now. There's just COVID changed everything. It just did. And saying, hey, what would you say to someone who feels like, hey, I played the game. I did all the things they told me to do. And now, you know, I can't buy a house, you know, or I can, but now I'm going to have to buy a house an hour away from where we work because there isn't one close. You know, there's just some things that are, it feels there's a lot of tension within us and frustration about where I'm at. What would you speak to someone who's sitting there in that seat?
I would start and my concern would be it would sound very condescending, which would not be the case, but one, we've talked about contentment. And I think, you know, we force our children to become adults faster than we became adults. And we became adults faster than our parents became adults, you know.
Every generation.
And now it's like, you know, the speed of time is just going by so fast that you're expecting 15, 16, 17-year-olds to really act like they're 22, 23, 24, and you're expecting 22-year-olds to act like they're 30. And that's just kind of the way of the world. But, you know, it's really an assessment of what's important to you. You know, when we first got married, we lived in an apartment for almost 4 years, saving up money for a down payment because we didn't want to be that much in debt, right? And now, when you look around Knoxville, good luck finding a new subdivision being built. Quite honestly, it's all multi-family. So even the option of finding a starter home, if you will, like we try to have. But when we were first looking, we were looking toward having a family, but you know, schools weren't the most important to us at that time. You know, when we have them, we'll move to good schools for our kids. You know, at some point that will or will not be important to you. So I think it's really kind of looking is being closer to home, is being downtown. I would just say start with that, and then you can kind of back into, okay, at some point you have to make decisions and choices. And that really doesn't matter how much money you've got. You still end up making decisions and choices around where to allocate that money. And so if you decide, well, you know, I'm willing to stay in an apartment so I can do X, Y, and Z, and maybe that's travel or pursue a degree or whatever happens, or move back in with my parents to do it. Then there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I went to 4 years at college so I could live with my parents, so I didn't graduate with debt.
Well, and pause on that. Live with your parents. I think that's actually really responsible and smart. But the money you are earning, save it. Don't spend it on nicer dinners and nicer clothes and nicer purses.
I love
Stick
nicer
it in the
dinners
bank.
and nicer clothes.
I
and
mean,
nicer
me
purses.
too. Who doesn't?
Are you
But
spending our money on nice purses?
No, I'm not actually. I don't own any nice purses. I have cut back on Starbucks. I'll tell you that.
I mean, you know, so you have discipline. Nobody likes discipline.
And you don't have to buy the new car. Buy the model that's 3 years older that's got 28,000 miles on it. You'll still get 10 years out of it.
That's true.
You know?
So some of the things I'm hearing you say is, hey, if I'm looking to see a shift, I need to make some decisions about what's important. I need to work a budget around that. Like, realistically, what do I actually have? And I need to make some sacrifices for those choices that I want to see.
Yeah, I say for a lot of people, just their first step is to stop hiding from the numbers.
That's huge.
You know, I just think if we could just pull the Band-Aid off of don't hide from the numbers. And so, like, the people that I talk to, because actually, when I help people with their physical stuff, I reverse the example you used of their calories are a budget. You know, because it's, you know, so, but people like to hide from both of those. And so, especially, it seems like it's harder even for ladies, but just, I need you to get on that scale once a week, and I just need you to face it. If you'll just face it, and again, there's a book called Good to Great, Jim Collins. It is statistically proven that the people who confront the brutal facts are more likely to be successful. And so confronting the brutal facts, it doesn't have to be brutal, But the fact, sometimes maybe your financial situation is brutal, or maybe it's just the facts. Yeah. But either way, none of this stuff can happen without confronting it. And again, like, God's not going to bring you to something He won't bring you through.
That's exactly
and so,
right.
like, He's got you. He's not going to leave you, whether it's black
exactly
or red
right.
or green. And so, but if people are thinking, okay, I would love to do everything you said to do.
Yeah.
Like, what would be the first step? You know, the first step is
Find the facts.
what Andy said earlier. Like, okay, what's the fact? And then if you really wanted the second step, if you could share that fact with somebody.
That's what I was saying. You got to find somebody who's doing what you want.
Yeah. Do not stop going to your broke friends for financial advice,
great.
or your divorced friend for marital advice. Again, like, I'm not saying they're not great people, but we bring the thought of misery loves company into the advice that we get, and the advice you get shouldn't the goal shouldn't be to hear, hey, it's okay. You know, that's why you go to somebody that may be in a worse situation. Go find somebody that's in a better situation. Find somebody that
They'll squeeze you and push you and encourage you. That's when iron sharpens iron. That doesn't. That's not gentle.
Yeah, it doesn't feel
It's
good.
not a pillow fight.
No.
There's sparks flying, but hey, let somebody challenge you and into. You said at the beginning, hey, a lot of times we don't want to have this conversation because it exposes me, and if you'll allow yourself to be exposed to the Lord and get spiritually free first, then you're going to be able to walk into a conversation with a friend and say, hey, I want to be better. Can you help me be better? And they're going to help you.
You can't title this "Expose Yourself," Rachel. I'm so
I will
sorry.
not.
I'm so sorry.
goodness.
Guys, I apologize. You know how
We'll
inappropriate
cut
she
that
gets.
from the podcast.
Don't you cut that. I got a thumbs up. The boss is not cutting
All
it.
right. Well, there you go. Hey, so we really do believe that God has given you a purpose. You have been purposed to win your world, to love God, to love people, help them do the same. So we hope today was encouraging to you, that as you heard, Jennifer and Andy share, hey, money does not have to hold you in bondage.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, money has been given to us. It's amoral, but we've been given the honor and the privilege to steward what God's given us in provision, and to give it not just to others, but honor the Lord first with it. So we hope you're encouraged today. We want to challenge you to go and win your world.